I'm J.D. Solomon, and I'm the chair of the ASBP Ethics Committee. Our speaker is Kerry Knudsen. He joins us from Toronto, where he is the owner, editor, and publisher of a media company, WI Media Inc., publishing a couple of national trade publications. So please welcome Kerry for his session, Strong Ethics Are Good Business.
Thank you, J.D. My name is Kerry Knudsen, not Knudsen. I was edified to see one of our earlier presenters mention King Canute. Canute's son is the son of Canute. There are many things people don't know about King Canute. He was the king of England for a number of years. Denmark kind of owned that northern part of Scotland and England prior to 1066. And then because the English got irked at King Canute for his domination of England, they decided to kill all the Danes in the world. And if you look up in Google Danish genocide, you'll find out that I'm one of the persecuted sub-minorities on the planet. No, very few people know that. Athelred the Unready was the king that did that, and we've never forgiven him. King Canute was son of Svein Forkbeard, and Svein was an offspring of Harold Bluetooth. And Harold Bluetooth is where we get the little rune. If you look that up in Danish runic alphabet, it's a Bluetooth. He liked blueberries a lot, and so you're carrying around a blueberry stain in your pocket. And I'm also glad that we mentioned Mike Tyson and his quote about everyone's got a plan until they throw the first punch in. I was sitting out here, I had a great presentation. I mean, I'm telling you, it was a great presentation. And now that whole thing has been redone. We're going to have to kind of wing it. There's so much to talk about and such important stuff. Let's talk about a guy. We had a little anecdote. I was out of school. I was idealistic, and I got a job as an editor, and then I moved up, and then I got another job. And I was in between these jobs, and I caught a car salesman ripping off a new widow. And wow, was I irritated. And I told the widow what was going on, and I saved her from what his plan was. And I went over and I said, don't you have any idea at all of ethics? And he said, I don't know why he didn't shut up. He said, everybody has an ethic. My ethic is this. If she comes in here with her money and I let her leave, then she's going to the next spot down the road, and that guy down there doesn't have any ethics, and he's going to take all of her money, so she's going to lose her money either way. And my ethic is that my kids need her money more than she does. And I call that the salesman's ethic, or the crackhead's ethic. He had a whole lot of talents. So I'm sitting here looking at strong ethics equals good business. And I'm thinking, here I am in the prized post-lunch first speaker spot where everybody's going to go to sleep on me in 3.5 minutes, and I'm going to say strong ethics equals good business. I'm also going to say that it's the only sustainable option. So where are we going with ethics? First of all, people will kill for information, literally kill. It happens often. You can read back. If you look back 2,500 years ago, you'll see that a Chinese general named Sun Tzu has a whole chapter in his book, The Art of War, on spying and what you do to get information and what you do when people give you bad information. And I'm going to contend that we all know, because we're journalists and we're editors, we all know that our job is to compile and organize, format, and present information. And then if we do that properly, the market is going to respond and say, hey, your information has value to me, and I'm going to reward you with my attention, or I'm going to reward you with certificates of appreciation, which are known as dollars. So we have found a way to monetize this flow of information. What we miss is that Sun Tzu said that the people that put out bad information are going to get killed too. We will kill to get good information, and we will kill you if you have bad information. So who is this group of torch-bearing, pitchfork-wielding people that are out there ready to kill us? And obviously, I'm using a bit of a metaphor, but not so much. If you looked at the news this week, you saw that the New Orleans Times-Picayune bit the dust. Everybody got fired. If you looked at the news this morning, you see that the White House has denied press passes to a couple dozen White House press pool reporters. When I said that, I'm sure that everybody here has got a side. You're on either that side or on that side. But as journalists and as editors, I think it's very important for us to recognize that there's something going on and that people do not appreciate some of the things that we do. We get caught out by one side or the other providing bad information. And so I think that we need to look at, do we know that the information we're putting out is bad? And are our readers telling us that they don't like this information? Has anybody here, for instance, ever worked for a company that's no longer in business? That's probably a few. I'm not going to ask for. I was also not going to ask for a show of hands for people that graduated KU. I see I'm always in the minority with that, but that's where I did my stuff. KU was a great experience for me. I exited a journalism school with a master's degree in magazines, and I was all idealistic, like I said. And then, as we'll see here in a minute, that led on to a fantasy, a dream, a realized dream of great career strides. And then it turned into a nightmare, and then it turned into heaven. And so we're going to watch that cycle here for a minute. It's going to be necessarily a little bit autobiographical, but let's go back to this idea that if I've established that throughout history, people will kill for information, and people will kill you if you give them bad information, just think about that. What if everything we know is wrong? What if everything we learned, everything we practiced, everything we've built our careers upon is wrong? What would that look like? What would happen if everything that we knew was wrong? Well, if you were just making this into an academic exercise, you might figure out, well, we'd see a decrease in readership. That would be a bad sign. We might see a decrease in revenues. That would be a bad sign. And we might see a decrease in profits, and then we would see a decrease in editorial resources, which means a lot of you and a lot of your friends would be shown the door, and then titles would close, and we would all be looking for work because we were giving people something that they didn't respond with certificates of appreciation. They didn't say, what you are saying to me has value. We looked instead at the advertiser, and we came up with the answer. The answer, why all those titles closed, why all those people are out of work, while they're doing bus driving. It's the internet, isn't it? It's the internet that has done this to us. So, let's look at that. I'll say the internet, I watched the internet. I was a CompuServe sysop in the 90s, and then the World Wide Web happened in about 92, 93. What happened actually was a little bitty program called a Windows socket, WinSock. And they stuck that WinSock on the Unix system, and it was able to translate all this Unix data that was being manufactured by universities, libraries, and the Defense Department into Windows compatible. So everybody that had a Windows machine could use the WinSock, and pow, the World Wide Web was there. It was just like pow, overnight. And then people were selling websites, and they were selling, that's another sermon. So, but before the internet, that was, let's say it's 92. Before that, we can go back, and what is a magazine? What is a periodical? And those go back a long ways. As a matter of fact, I was reading Common Sense by Tom Paine on the rereading on the plane coming down, because I wanted to refresh my memory on some points. Tom Paine was a Revolutionary War era writer, and Common Sense is something every journalist should read, not only have, but read. I don't mean have the volume, I mean read. I was reading it on my iPhone, because I don't carry books around with me much anymore. But if you look at Tom Paine, you look at Ben Franklin, those people would have killed rather than convey King George III's message around for them. They had no interest at all in hearing King George III's message. And then you can follow that up through Civil War time. There was Graham's magazine. I don't know if you ever had to take history of American journalism or not. I did. Calder Pickett, ring-tailed sucker. I'll tell you, he was a hard taskmaster. But we had to memorize stuff. I had to memorize when the New Orleans Times-Picayune was actually founded back then. I can't remember now, but I did. They had Graham's magazine, and then later they had Reader's Digest and Time. And then those things were interesting for me and Graham's and Ben Franklin up until the Reader's Digest and Time and a bunch of other titles, you know, Better Housekeeping, Home and Gardens. Those things were all owned by independent operators. They're all owned by families. They're all owned by one person or two people. So you had Henry Luce and Claire Booth Luce on Time. You had DeWitt and Lila Wallace on Reader's Digest. And all of these people were very, very influential. And people saw that there was power and knowledge combined, which is what Tom Paine talks about. Power and knowledge. He didn't talk about money. That comes afterward. So you get power and knowledge combined. And people saw this power, and they saw the money, and they saw the popularity, and they saw the broad market. And then you saw Hearst, Time Warner, Vance Publishing, and Meredith, and all those started being agglomerators. They started buying up magazines. When I graduated school, one of my professors said, you know, if you want to have a really great career, own a magazine. If you want to be rich, sell one. And I think that might have been true at the time. So what we saw is a consolidation of titles. It happened in news. I'm going to make a distinction between newspapers and magazines right here, because newspapers can be defeated by the internet if what you're looking for is instant, if you're looking for timely, if you're looking for what's really happening in Colorado last night, you know, what's really happening in Washington, D.C. this morning. Newspapers can't keep up. But the magazine continues to write things that are more in-depth, more focused, more audience targeted, and more valuable. If you want to know what is value to a magazine reader, for a business-to-business magazine reader, you're looking at quality, you're looking at cost, and you're looking at turnaround. Quality, cost, turnaround. So they want to know what's my perceived value, or what's the perceived value of my goods. Cost can be compliance costs, or it can be labor costs, or marketing costs, and of course turnaround or efficiency is how fast can you help your target audience create those things. That's assuming you're talking to a production market, which is what I do. I think, unless you want to talk a long time about it, there's a history of American journalism that follows this marching of time through not only the internet, but also a differentiation from independent, vocal, free speech, if you will, the voice of a person, of an idea, of just a voice, versus the committee, the bottom line, the bean counters, and the quarterly revenues. So that's what happened. And concurrently with that, in about 1986, we'll see that the Supreme Court of the United States, and coincidentally, the Supreme Court of Canada in the mid-'80s, both of them came up with a legal ideal called a limited right of free expression for commercial interests. And that is when commerce got its foot in the door, and was able then to tell people what we have the right for you to tell our side of the story too. And if you're going to be objective, you need to tell about our Nikes or whatever. And we started seeing a big push. When I was in school, again, one of my professors took me aside. I was having a debate with him on this issue, and he said a lot of things. One of the things that was really irksome was he said, if you really want to own an editor, buy him a pair of Nikes and take him to Orlando. You can own a whole magazine for $1,000 a year. But the idea was that the advertiser had a greater right because he was the one that was providing the revenues, and as long as the advertiser had the greater right, then the advertiser got to dictate terms. And I fought that, and I have never not fought it. Well, what that brought out for me is the natural, this is where we deviate a bit from reality. I have my world, you have your world. What I see is the natural relationship of an advertiser to reader is predator to prey. It is not a symbiotic relationship. So the advertiser, this is what Tim told me, is that the advertiser may ruin a magazine. The people may leave the magazine. The advertisers will stop seeing a return on investment, and they may decide not to advertise anymore. The magazine dies. He said it doesn't matter. Nature abhors a vacuum, and there will be another magazine. You can take control of that one. You're just as good as when you started. The natural relationship of a magazine to its readers is as a gatekeeper. I think we're all adults. We understand that we may be taking these sheep to market along the way, but along the way they have to know what your interests are, what you're going to do for them, how you're going to do it, how much you're going to stand up for them, how much you put into it. They want to know what your input is. What is your relationship to them? What is your value to them? So again, shepherd and wolf. Even though sheep may be for market, it's the job of the publisher to protect them or not. And that's what the readers expect. And if you survey the readers, if you survey my readers, that's what they say. And I do survey my readers. I've surveyed them almost to death. And now that everybody's popping them with a survey every time they go to a hotel, I've quit. I've told them I'm not going to bother you about that anymore. If I talk to you, if I ask for a survey, I'm serious and I want you to talk back, and we do. So here I am. I ended up in Canada. That's a story. I was working for Vance Publishing in Kansas City, and then I got asked to help start a magazine up in Michigan, and I got that done. And then we went down and I had to upgrade a magazine from CompuGraphic, cut and paste, to Quark Express and all that stuff. 3 magazines, and we did that. And then I got this thing on CompuServe that we would like an editor to come over and help us fix our magazine. We're losing money. And I thought, wasn't that a hoop? You know, like I showed my wife, and she said, well, the kids are gone. We've got nothing going on. Like, what the hell? So, I've not been very fear-averse in my life. I've kind of been more curious. Like, what are they talking about? Like, what's Canada anyway? So I went there. And I got into a situation with, you know, had some money coming in and doing good, and had an audience going. And the company that we were working with got sold, and then the company that bought it started putting pressure on me. One day the vice president came in and said, all this stuff that you're talking about, like reader first and not doing special stuff for the advertisers and stuff, is going to stop. From now on, you're going to write nice stuff about the advertisers. I didn't, and they're dead. They went out of business. They're pushing this other fellow out that was a salesman for my company, for my magazine. I call it my magazine, their magazine. But he wanted out, and he wanted something to sell. So I make them, he sells them. So in 2005, we started up WI Media. And it was like gangbusters. It was everything I could have wanted. We went from revenues of like $640,000 in the last quarter of 2005 to $1.6 million in 2006 or 7. We made good money, and everything was great except for somebody got greedy, and somebody decided to pull a legal stunt, and what he wanted to do was push me out, put his son in. Anybody can do what Kerry does, and he pulled a trigger on a little legal term in our contract, and unfortunately for him, I guess, he missed. And because he missed, it's called a shotgun buy-sell if you want to look it up. But what he did was he missed, and that gave me the opportunity to buy the company, and I had no money, and that's what he was counting on. But I went to the business bank, and I gave them a prospectus, and they go, wow, that looks pretty interesting, and let us look at it. And they loaned me a couple $100,000, and I bought the magazine, and wow, was he mad. Whoa. And he still is. So I'm going to back up just a bit, because in 2007, that was in 2008. In 2007, I had an opportunity to buy a flooring magazine. And what had happened with flooring magazine was that the publisher had been able to give away all the editorial, sell all the editorial, give away all the ads. He was able to help his buddies, all of his friends in the advertising world, in the sales world. And by golly, didn't what I said would happen, happen. They left him, because after the readers quit reading, because he would always do it, put Schneer on the front and Schneer on the first page, and Melmart on the third page, and here's what Melmart's doing, and here's a golf game where Schneer's getting a trophy, and the readers just quit reading, and the return on investment quit. The advertisers weren't getting any return, and he had to go out of business. Had to fire his own daughter as art director, and I was able to buy his magazine for nothing. Not nothing, a little. So I bought the magazine, and I had it from March until March, about 2 weeks, and this guy with Schneer called me up, Chris Schneider, and he said, okay, here's what we're going to do for the July issue. We're going to have 1 page of advertising, we're going to have 2 pages of editorial, it's going to be about our annual conference, and we're going to do this. And I said, whoop. Wait a minute, we're under new ownership here, we got a different policy, and I don't think we can do it that way, because we're trying to, groom the readership, and I've told the readers, and da-da-da-da-da. No, he said, you're not listening. We're advertisers, and this is the way it's going to be. And it ended up with me driving to their national headquarters and getting a good browbeating. I got dressed down, taken to the woodshed. They called it taken to the woodshed. And we walked out of there with my principles intact, and I lost 6 advertisers. Schneer being a group of 6 distributors. So what happened was, in a couple of months, somebody called me from a different town and said, what happened with Schneer? And I said, oh, they're just not advertising. He said, well, I thought they owned half your magazine. I go, no, you don't know. He said, well, I didn't know that. Well, if Schneer's out, I'm in. And the next thing I know, I've got double-page spreads from people you may have heard of, Custom Building Products, Proma, Mapei buys the part across from my Smart editorial for a 15% premium. I don't want to leave anybody out. Ardix buys double-page spreads. And we're not cheap. We're not cheap. We're a little market in Canada. It costs us a lot to print. And so we recovered. We had a blip, and we recovered. And Schneer and Stevens Omni and those other guys handling advertising with me since. That was in 2007. Then this guy, my former partner. So these guys came after me. First hit my sales guy, and then me. I got this call. You're going to notice that I'm not buying any more ads from you, Kerry. This is the other magazine, the big magazine. And I said, why not? He said, you know why not? We're friends with Blair. Blair was the publisher. He's the guy with the sales contacts. He's the guy with the Gucci shoes. I'm the little nerdy guy in the background, not very little, but in the background, typing away and, asking questions and taking pictures. And so they liked Blair. And so they called me up, and they pulled out, there was about 8 of them. I call them the cartel. They pulled out the members of the Canadian Woodworking Machinery Dealers Association. They pulled out their advertising, and then they went around trade shows saying, we're all pulling out our advertising away from this guy. He won't do what he's told, and we're going over with this guy. And so that was in 2008, and you know what happened then, right? The stock market crash. Things were looking grim. And I was going to bed at night. I had people to pay. It's a classic thing of somebody that's become an instant entrepreneur is, how am I going to make payroll tomorrow and this kind of stuff. It was sad. I mean, and here I was. These guys are they pointed a gun at my head and said, here's what's going to happen. And I'm going to tell you, if that ever happens to you, you have 3 choices. I'm not saying I'm a hero or a genius. What happened was they pointed a gun at my head, and I had everything that I would ever own or earn in my life on the line. So you can either kneel and cry, you can take the hit, or you can take that gun away from them and stick it up their nose. And I chose option 3. And what option 3 was is called the monograph, and I did a 10,000-word, 8-page insert in my magazine. I independently printed it elsewhere, passed it out at trade shows. I'm not trying to say this is what I recommend. I don't, because it cost me. It cost me a lot. But I saw it as the only way that I had a chance of surviving. So it's called the monograph, and here it is. And wow, were they mad. I made a note on my correspondence that if you want to ask me a question, then it falls flat later and no one wants to talk to me, and we can talk about knowing the law. I credit KU, any school. I was in law. I had to take my media law courses in a law school, and so I learned about libel. Let me say something about earlier this morning. Do not be deceived about errors and omissions in libel. They are not the same. If you have errors and omissions insurance, you don't have libel insurance. And libel is the big, ugly, mean tiger in the den, and that's the one that can kill people. So if you're freelancing, or if you're running a magazine, or if you're helping run a magazine, make sure you have libel insurance. I had Ford come after me one time claiming that they were going to sue me for libel because I didn't match their Ford Blue in their ad, right? And on the contract, it didn't say match color, it said process color. And you think, they don't care. You know, that's enough of Ford. Okay, so there's the monograph. So then I get lawyers after me, and I wrote some letters that my lawyer thinks is funny and says, don't ever do that again. But all of them haven't done it again. And by now, most of them have come back 2 years later. I'm still trying to get these people to come together, trying to get them to understand that the readers are listening. The readers don't like the sold-out magazine. The readers don't like it that I got pushed around for nothing. The readers like it that I stand up for them. And I went over to see Bloom Canada. Bloom is an Austrian hardware maker. The general manager is Kevin Tratt in Canada, and he was being a problem. And his specified reason, his stated reason for not wanting to advertise with my magazines was this: you won't do what you are told. He got that right. So I was talking to him. I said, Kevin, you've got to be reasonable. I said, look what happened just a couple weeks ago. The guys at Charlie Hebdo got a message, and they were told, you know, don't ever do what you're doing again. And they did it, and they got killed. The Islamic fascists came in and killed them. Charlie Hebdo, Paris. And he said, Kerry, they should have known. They were told. And there's the gun again. I just got this attitude about people pointing a gun. And it just, so Bloom isn't advertising with me. But I was reinforced. The point is, I did the monograph. I had all kinds of second thoughts. Wow, that was a big deal. That was a mess. Am I going to ever survive this? I had no choice, though. What's going to happen? And then this came along, and I realized, you know, because of who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing, I didn't have a choice. And now I can understand why I didn't have a choice. Anybody that thinks that these guys were right in having told Charlie Hebdo not to do something and killing them when they didn't simply doesn't have anything to talk about in my world. So what I passed out here is what I see as a solution to this dichotomy we have where we need to split up commercial speech from free speech. And it says here, and this is stolen from the Canadian Code of Advertising Standards. I specifically like the Society of Professional Journalists as well. I'm not picking on anybody. This one I just picked it up, but that's where it's from mostly. Advertising and advertisements are defined as any message, the content of which is controlled directly or indirectly by an advertiser, expressed in any language and communicated in any medium to an audience with the intent to influence their choices, opinions, or behaviors. And an advertiser, the same document says, an advertiser is defined as an entity that has or shares with one or more other entities authority over the content of an advertisement. So I see the future of the media as that there's going to be a dissolution. I think Facebook is falling apart. I think MySpace fell apart. Facebook is being called Fakebook. You know, people love to run to these bright, shiny objects. People want the idea of something for nothing. People love the idea of communication as though we were Procter & Gamble. Well, my business isn't Procter & Gamble. My readership on the big magazine is 14,000. What they want is somebody that knows their issues, somebody can talk to them in their language, and somebody can walk down the trade show floor and say, hey, there's Kerry. Kerry, come over here. What the hell are you talking about? So it's different. And what I think is that there are options. I think there are options for people that don't want to be a stenographer for their biggest 3 advertisers. Yeah? And those options may not exist where you are. One thing you can do is what I did. You can start your own publication. If you have a profile, if you can attract an audience, if you have a product to sell, a message to carry, then what you need is one of 2 things. You need either a lot of money that you can pay for it yourself, or you need a prospectus that'll knock the socks off of the banker, which is what I did. And I didn't have anything else, so that's what did it. There are other choices. You can incorporate some chosen codes of ethics by reference in your employment contract. That thing I sent out to you is suitable for framing. You can take that definition and you can say, and in our writings and my publishings or whatever, we will adhere to this code of ethics, and just do it in passing, just a statement. But then if it comes up, you're going to be a stenographer for a big advertiser, you go, but I'm not supposed to do that. You see, we signed a contract that says that we don't do that because advertising is what it is. I'm going to contend that over the long term, the only thing that's sustainable as a business model in publications, and by the way, I don't differentiate between internet. To me, you got formats. You got tabloid, you got journal, you got digest, you got broadsheet, you got email, you got website, you got it's all formats. The question is audience and content. Can you get somebody to respond to you and tell you that you've given them something of value? And I got many, many better things to do with my life than to sit here and stage drama. But I'm sitting back there and my iPhone buzz, so I want to see, we just closed our magazine Monday. We're shipping it. I got people working up there. I got to watch this thing. I'm leaving after the show here and going back home. This is a letter I got from the new magazine for the flooring side that just hit. The flooring side just hit this week. Guy named Paul Green. Kerry, just a quick note to say, great job on the latest issue of Coverings. A great cross-section of product trends, installation support, and specification and maintenance knowledge shared. The issue provides useful and current information that flows well and delivers value to the reader. Thanks to you and the team. Paul Green, President and Chief Revenue Officer, Schneer. So I got lunch with him a week from Monday. So I hope you're rooting for me. That's what I got to say. Thanks a lot. Questions?
Kerry, just to sort of crystallize this your career deserved even a longer amount of time to go through because.
I know. How long?
So what I want to point out here, you really played hardball.
I had no
in a way
choice.
that probably most of us haven't seen. You're still standing, and the trust that your readers have in you is the reason. And I just wonder if different trends in how, let's say, magazines or other publications, B2B publications specifically, are sort of how the personnel is being organized and working together in the offices. What you see and how we're running our publications now, does any of it bother you in terms of placing more risk in not putting readers' trust first?
Do I see a risk for the publications and not putting readers' trust first? Yeah, they're going to die. The readers, that's why I said readers don't like it. Just a filler in there is that I paid off that multi-$100,000 loan to the bank, and every year my magazines collectively and individually have been in the black. So we're not making anything like the money we did, but my mortgage is paid up. I own one car and the company owns the other, and I'm not a rich guy, but I'm a happy guy.
So lots of newspapers and magazines now use what they call advertorials or sponsored content. And I'd like to hear your take on that and how that might work or not work in service relations to your ethics in publication.
Yeah, those standards are published in our codes of ethics. I think it's in the ASBPEs. If an advertorial, we'll do advertorials. I've offered to do advertorials. It says advertorial or advertising, and you don't match or try to mimic the nature of the page. You don't try to make, the idea is you don't trick your readers. They're not that stupid in the beginning, so why bother?
So my question, I guess, was too, did you offer that, was that an option with this consortium of advertisers that was trying to tell you what to publish?
No, that was a blood fight. That was because I went around my former partner. That was a gang, and it was a gang attack. Thanks again.